What's up, YouTube? Bench day. It's also getting close to the strongman competition, so we're modifying the intensity a little bit. So instead of doing 255, did it last week for 3 sets of 5, so that was cool. We're not doing that this week. We're just going to do a pyramid. About to hit the peak set here of 235 for 10. That'll be good. That'll be happy if I can get to 10. And pretty sure I can, but we'll see, right? That's how it always is. You're going to get it whether I get it or not. You're going to see what happened. So we also got Psalm 18 going on. As we go back down the pyramid, I guess if I'd have been smart, I would have already started the video with this, because we're not going to read it all because it's 50 verses, but we are going to hit the points. It's almost like it's a really good story, a poetic story. So it's we'll get into that in a second, but first, some bench. Let's do some bench. How about that? Yeah, man, that's pretty cool. I've actually never done that in my life, so I'm pretty happy. That was heavy. It's just a different feel, because your body is telling you, well, this isn't as heavy as you normally lift. But then your mind is telling you, what are you doing? It's more than 5 reps. You're an idiot. Stop. But nope. That's why you got to get your mind and your body right. All right, let's get into the Psalm 18 thing. All right, so if you got one of those Bibles that explains a lot of stuff, it'll tell you it's one of David's Psalms that he wrote when God had delivered him from all of his enemies and Saul. So I don't know if look, that's a description. So David didn't say that about the Psalm. It's just what people say about the Psalm, but it's kind of interesting to think about for a second, just real quick, because, even though Saul tried to kill David for years, spent years trying to kill David, David never looked at Saul as his enemy in the way that he would look at, say, the Philistines or the Ammonites and some of the other little scattered people around that were annoying, pesky enemies of Israel. So maybe that's why they make the distinction, or just to get the whole picture for you that, David's now sitting in a position of victory. So we'll read some of different sections of it. like I say, it's 50 verses long, but there's some really important things for us to learn about defeat, victory, and attitude for sure. And most importantly, how God is in every bit of that. And it's doing it, whether it's our defeat or our victory, it's all part of for our good and for His glory. And He's doing it for a reason. So it starts out, I will love Thee, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God, my strength, in whom I will trust. My buckler and the horn of my salvation, and my high tower. I will call upon the Lord, because He is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. So right off the rip, He's given all the glory to God. Now we don't know yet exactly, what has happened. If you just open the psalm and start reading it, you see someone giving God glory for victory. But now he spends several verses kind of going through the valley of defeat that he was in before the victory came. So he's talking about the sorrow of death, the sorrow of hell, being in distress, and calling out to God. And we know that happened for a long time with David. I mean, he was anointed as a child to become king of Israel. He had some, small little wins along the way. I wouldn't call them major victories. But it seemed like maybe when he defeated Goliath, is this going to be the start of something? Oh, never mind. Then he goes out under the command of Saul, wipes out large sections of the Philistines. Is this going to be the start of something? No. And it took patience and patience and patience. And, sometimes I think I need to learn patience, even though some people tell me I'm too laid back. Then other times when I'm angry that things aren't happening fast enough, do I need to learn patience? Or do I need to put my foot down and say, look, enough's enough? Man, it's a hard thing to figure out sometimes. So this is where he's at. And then what's so great about this psalm, it's like I say a lot of times, we don't do enough now in modern Christianity to give God enough glory, to give God enough praise for what He's doing. It's just like, oh, thank God, and then the next 20 minutes you're talking about yourself. Yeah, you're talking about what God did, but you're talking about yourself. You're not talking about what God did and how God did it. It's all about, well, I'm praising God because I this and me that, and me this and I that. And it's like, just check your vocabulary a little bit, because he spends so many verses here talking about God winning, even though David visibly would have been the one doing the winning. He's saying here that it was God, because he goes about how the earth shook and trembled, foundations of the hills moved and were shaken. I love this one. There went up smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. When God moves, He's going to do it in a big way, and there's going to be no doubt, even though, like I say, we still tend to make it about us all the time. He bowed the heavens also and came down, and darkness was under His feet. He rode upon a cherub and did fly. He made darkness His secret place. At the brightness that was before Him, thick clouds passed. It was like hailstones and fire. The Lord thundered. He gave His voice. There's more. He sends out arrows, shot out lightning. The channels of waters were seen at the foundation of the world. Where does it go? I think it's, the Lord, at the blast of the breath of Thy nostrils, He sent from above. He took me, He drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy and from them that hated me. For they were too strong for me. They prevented me in the day of my calamity. But the Lord was my stay. It would have been easy for David as a king to talk about his army or his intelligence as a military commander. But instead he's talking about how God did it, how God moved, how God won the victory, how God exposed everything. And because go back and read, 1st and 2nd Samuel, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, where David's 300 men, or David's inner circle with his general and his brothers, or, the 30, the 3. I mean, he's got like this whole thing. And, well, he's got all this strategy and he's got all these things going, but here he's telling us that it's actually God doing it. God thundering from the heaven, God moving, God flying around and winning for him. So let's do some more benching. Man, 185 was flying today. So let's go on. So what does God do for David? It says, he brought me forth into a large place. He delivered me because he delighted in me. Talks about God rewarding him according to his righteousness. How David kept God's ways. Let's see. I mean, he goes on explaining, how he was working hard to be obedient. And when that, he's not bragging. He's just pointing out the fact that when things weren't going good, he trusted God anyway. He obeyed God anyway. He didn't try to do it on his own. He didn't cause a rebellion or an uprising. He just stayed the course and trusted that God would one day fulfill the promise that he had made with that anointing to make him king. He says, I was also upright before him. I kept myself from mine iniquity. That's like David's being tempted to do stuff, and he just said, no, he's not. I won't do it. It's keeping yourself from iniquity. Think about that. That's a big deal. That's something else we need to spend more time on these days. It's like we want to have all these little sob stories about, oh, I did my best, but then you didn't do your best. Your best would have been you don't do that thing, whatever it might be. That would be your best. If you gave in, that's more like you didn't do your best, right? But it's like when people say stuff like that and then we let them get away with it, they get comfortable staying in that state of screw up. And maybe that's not fair to them that we won't call them out for it, because they do need help getting out of that. But the more we sit there and nod and agree with them, all we're doing is helping them stay failures. And David eventually had some people, but there was a point early when he was running from Saul where he was just alone and didn't have anybody, and he still stayed true. So therefore the Lord has encompassed me according to my righteousness, recompensed me. In other words, rewarded for being obedient, doing what he's supposed to do. He says, praising God for things God does. With the merciful, thou wilt show yourself merciful, and with the upright, you'll show yourself upright. With the pure, you'll show yourself pure. And then he goes, with the froward, you'll show yourself froward. In other words, that's probably not the best translation of that word, but God is shrewd in how he deals with the unrighteous people. For thou wilt save the afflicted people, but will bring down high looks. For thou wilt light my candle, the Lord my God will enlighten my darkness. And he goes on, as for God's ways perfect. Who is God except God, or the Lord? Who is a rock, save our God? It is God that girdeth me with strength and makes my way perfect. He made my feet like hinds feet and sets me upon high places. He teaches my hands to war so that a bow of steel is broken by my arms. I mean, come on, David's talking about physical strength that he has given me a shield. Your right hand holds me up, and your gentleness has made me great. Thou hast enlarged my steps under me, so that my feet did not slip. I mean, he's just over and over and over again praising God for all the stuff that we would have seen David physically accomplish. Yet, he's saying it's because God made me strong, God made me smart, God made me all these things, God gave me sure footing. So David's like, I can't really take all the credit for this, because in one sense, I was just this guy hiding from my life in a cave, holding on to a promise, but with no real evidence that it would ever take place, other than the memory of Samuel pouring oil on his head and saying that he was going to be king one day. But every time he did kingly things for a while, it seemed to backfire on him, I mean, he married Saul's daughter. That backfired. Kills Goliath. That, instead of setting him up for success, seemed to cause, his brothers made fun of him before he did it. And once he started accomplishing other military feats, Saul started to see him as a threat instead of an asset. Well, let's do this one. Cool. That was, fast. But whatever. I mean, it always feels weird not doing a lot, or what I normally do, or whatever. So, but look, it's focusing on the goal, right? Strongman contest, not how much I bench this week, because the 12th is coming up fast. Well, where are we? All right, so then he goes on, where are we at here? Here we go. Talking about how God has enabled him, empowered him, strengthened him. And then he goes, I love it. He describes what he has done now. And some of this might sound just pretty wild compared to what we're used to these days. But this is just cold, hard truth sometimes that we got to remember. This is sometimes how God works and moves and what he does. Because watch what David does now. I have pursued my enemies and overtaken them, neither did I turn again until they were consumed. I have wounded them, and they were not able to rise. They are fallen under my feet. For thou hast girded me with strength unto the battle. Thou hast subdued under me those that rose up against me. So even when he starts talking about like what he did, he pauses and still says, God did it. Okay? Take note of that mindset. Thou hast also given me the necks of mine enemies, that I might destroy them that hate me. They cried, but there was none to save them, even unto the Lord, but he answered them not. There are several references in the Bible to where people cried out to God, and God did not answer. Now, we don't know their heart, we don't know their mind, their attitude. They may have been, it's sort of that whole like, I'm sorry because I got caught. I'm not sorry because I know what I did was wrong kind of a mindset, like Esau, because Paul references that in Romans 9. you have Pharaoh going back and forth with this, ask God to stop the plagues, and then God stops the plagues, and Pharaoh's like, ha, psych, y'all aren't going anywhere. And, you got this right here. And so, we have to kind of look at both sides of the coin when it talks about God not answering people. So, there's just a thought. But the fact is, he doesn't answer these people when they cry to help. Then did I beat them small as dust before the wind. I did cast them out as the dirt in the streets. And he goes back to praising God. Thou hast delivered me from the strivings of the people. Thou hast made me the head of the heathen. People whom I have not known shall serve me. So, David goes from being this refugee, fugitive in a cave, to being somebody that everybody in the world was afraid of. And not in like a, David's a mean guy, just this guy's really powerful, I need to check myself kind of thing. The Lord liveth, and blessed be my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. It is God that avengeth me, and subdueth the people under me. He delivered me from my enemies, and those that lifted up against me. He goes on. I love the last two verses. Therefore I will give thanks unto thee, O Lord, among the heathen, and sing praises unto thy name. Great deliverance giveth he to his king, and showeth mercy to his anointed, to David, and to his seed forevermore. And so there's forevermore promise in there, of course, is pointing us directly to Christ. Because in a literal sense, that's what happens with David. And then in the prophetic, illustrative sense, we're looking at what this little tiny picture of David here, and the big picture of when Jesus comes again for real victory, for eternal victory, and how the patience and the waiting that David went through pales in comparison to the patience and the waiting of Christ for him to come back and win. So just some things from Psalm 18. It's great. Read it all, because of course I had to skip through it because it's 50 verses. I just tried to hit some really interesting ones to move along through the story there, because it's like a poetry story, so you have to understand what's what in those situations. So I'm going to do some more boring things like narrow grip and wide grip and whatever. So y'all go out and have a good day if you want to. Daddy's at work now, he's trying